Hello and welcome to Demian Allen's Tarot and Astrology channel for your April 2021 forecast. I hope you're all out there doing well in these, strange times that we have. Okay, so I'm going to start like I usually do with obviously the 1st of April and just look at the planetary activity and some of the transits that are dominating the skies. So this is on April 2021 at 6 in the morning UK, and we can see that the moon is a void of course, going from Scorpio into Sagittarius. One of the things about the early part of April that's quite a dominating factor. We still have two planets here in Pisces. Of course, Neptune, which has been there since 2011 and will continue to. It's at 21 degrees now in Pisces, Neptune, and a separating conjunction of Mercury in Pisces at 24 degrees. We start off. So that is still a conjunction between the two, although it's a separating conjunction. You know, the aspects of smoke and mirrors that can dominate the media at this time, and has been over the particularly last week and a half of March, and still going into April. So things are not clear. How things are portrayed within the media or in the news or in the political field is not clear or crystal clear, as we probably all like. We want decisive answers, and we're not really necessarily getting them. And that will continue until Mercury goes into Aries, when that becomes a little more decisive. We can also see that the Sun and Venus are in conjunction with each other by 2 degrees. The Sun in Aries, Venus in Aries, and Venus in Aries is not a comfortable position. If you think about Venus, it's a planet that is about how we relate socially to people, and usually to relate to people, we've got to be diplomatic, we've got to listen, we've got to partake in a conversation which is equally given space and time for two people involved. And you know, if you think about in social situations, there's a certain etiquette in certain different social situations that we have to learn about. And certainly in my astrological philosophical thinking, the ages of 14 to 21, 14 years of age to 21 years of age, is, you know, ruled by Venus. And this is when teenagers are going out and forming groups and forming friendships and relationships, and find out about what is socially acceptable, what's not, finding new tribes. So it's a very important journey. So by the time you're 21, you should have a grasp of how to function in certain social situations, what's expected of you, when to ask questions, when to engage. And when we put Venus in with Aries, Aries is an impulsive sign, and the ruler of Aries is of course Mars, which is a sort of a polarity of Venus, and it's impulsive, it's brash, it's boisterous, it's direct, it's independent, it is very tunnel visioned, and that doesn't necessarily go with some of the Venus traits of the planet. So the two of them find it, they kind of don't necessarily mix very well. And you know, when Venus is too close to the Sun, it definitely can't express itself as well as it looked like. So we have that on the 1st of April. Also, the Sun is just separating from being in conjunction with the asteroid Chiron here as well. And although both the Sun and Venus are making sextiles with Mars, and Mars is separating from a conjunction with a North Node here, which does support that aspect quite a bit. Okay, We've still got the ongoing, and I talked about this in the last March video, square between Saturn and Uranus that's taking place here. Although Saturn is the faster moving of the planets, so it's 11 degrees, and Uranus is at 9 degrees, but it's still a square, and that always brings out revolutions or an uprising or battles with governmental institutions, and that has been happening in different countries around the world, and that will continue. That is the general theme of 2021: the people trying to overthrow policies, governments, and demonstrations against certain policies will take place. We also have Jupiter here at 23 degrees in Aquarius here, and really it's a little bit sort of left to its own devices at the moment. Jupiter in Aquarius, it doesn't make a conjunction with Saturn. It's too far away. So it is a bit left on its own, and when a planet's left on its own, it means it can do what it's sort of built to do, but it's got no other planet or planets to feed off. So there's some of the Jupiter themes that we might have been experiencing is just less so. It's just not as prevalent at this particular point in April, but we'll move on and see how that kind of manifests. So I would say that the early first couple of days of April is reasonably quiet, actually. So let's just move into let's go to the 6th of April here, and we can see the moon is now in Aquarius, forming a conjunction with Saturn here, and now we may see that Jupiter's it's got a trine aspect with Mars, although Mars is again the fastest moving planet, so it's forming a trine with Jupiter, so Jupiter's suddenly becoming a bit more alive here, the Jupiterian themes. That brings in quite a lot of optimism, actually. With that, we may have pessimism without Jupiter in the first 4 days of April, and then we get this kind of built-in optimism that starts to collectively happen here for ourselves. Okay, so you can see that there's starting to get a dominance of the Aryan energy. Of course, the sun is at 16 degrees, Venus is at 19 degrees, they're still forming a conjunction with each other. But more importantly, now at 3 degrees, we've got Mercury. Mercury is now in Aries, and Mercury likes to be in Aries. It can actually start to function. It can do stuff. So Mercury is all about how we communicate, how we exchange ideas, buying, selling as well. So anything to do with retail, things can actually start to happen. Whereas when it's in Pisces, it can't really function. And if it tries to, it finds it difficult. Unless the buying and selling or retail products is some things that have a sort of Piscean feel to them, oil or the film industry, or those kind of themes might do rather well. But Mercury going into Aries, for retail sectors, for buying and selling goods, it's action orientated. It's a fire sign, and Mercury can operate, if a little bit direct, a little bit impulsive, a little bit of not really thinking about the long term or the consequences of action. You could say at least it gets moving, and that's accentuated obviously by the sun being Aries, Venus being in Aries as well. So there's quite a big kind of sense that things are moving forward quite quickly now, and collectively in the Western world, certainly here, things are beginning to move, and that Mercury's quite nice. And it's also on that day, it's going to be, it's sort of forms a sextile a bit earlier, actually, on the sort of 5th with the moon. So I think the 5th of April is going to be the kind of time we really sort of feel that optimism coming through. Now Mars is in Gemini, as I said, it's forming a trine aspect with Jupiter. That's quite nice. And you know, I do feel with Mars in Gemini, it's better than Mars in Taurus, what we had previously. But it's still a little bit messy. Gemini is a mutable sign, it's an air sign, it's about ideas. We could do this, we could do that, that could happen, that could happen. Well, if we do it's not necessarily being right, let's stick with this idea and go for it. It's a bit more sort of, we'll look at this idea, then we'll take that idea, then we'll do this idea, which can be a little bit sort of spread yourselves too thin, too many irons in the fire scenario, and not enough direction and going, right, okay, let's just go for this. And I think that it's in an air sign, it's all about, you know, it's like the continuous meeting about the same subject matters. You know, we could do this, we could do that. That's a good idea. Let's look at this side of things, you know. So although there is things in discussion with Mars and Gemini, it's a little bit sort of, you know, there's nothing of substance coming out yet. And it's at 19 degrees, so it's in the second, just at the end of the second decan of Gemini, before it goes into the last decan of Gemini, which is Saturn ruled. So those last 10 degrees of Gemini, we've got a little bit more, right, okay, substance coming from here. Let's really focus on where we want to go here. I certainly think at this sort of, I mean, the Aries are always, if you're the Sun in Aries or Aries ascendant, you're gonna feel this energy quite a bit in April here. But if you're born in the last 10 days of when the Sun is in Gemini, you know, between that sort of 10th and 20th of June, then, you know, there's a lot to accomplish over April, from the sort of, particularly from the 7th, 8th of April onwards for you Geminis. So a lot that can be gained here. Just a quick note on Pluto. Always got to go back to Pluto. Interesting thing that's happening here. Pluto's at 26 degrees in Capricorn, of course. We can see that there's a couple, these two planets here, the Sun and Venus, are applying, making a square aspect to Pluto, particularly Venus at 19 degrees. It is applying here, and that's interesting if we talk about collectively, or if you've got some planets that are around about that 20 degrees to 27 degrees in the cardinal points, or the cardinal signs, I should say, so Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. You're going to feel that energy of that Venus squaring Pluto, which is all about deeper issues within relationships or how you relate to others coming up at that time. That could be internally, from your own kind of subconscious, to external manifestations, as in people drawing that out of you, or partners or potential partners drawing that out of you. You know, that whole thing about what's your real motivation, and how do you really kind of feel. So certainly for the cardinal signs, or if you've got planets that are at the 20 to 27 degrees in Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, then you're going to feel that kind of energy building up here. Okay, let's just move on to the second stage. So I'm going into the 12th of April. And we can see on the 12th that we have the new moon here. The Sun is at 22 degrees in Aries, and the moon is at 23 degrees. So it's just had the new moon, literally a couple of hours beforehand in the UK. So around about 4 in the morning. So new moon in Aries is interesting, because Aries is the start of the astrological wheel, and therefore it starts the whole cycle of the different stages you know, the planets and the signs. And the sort of new moon in Aries is always quite refreshing, I always find, for, you know, particularly talking to clients and stuff like that. They get a real kind of sense of renewal and a sense of looking forward. It's quite nice, and actually being quite brave and courageous in the decisions. So around about this time in the new moon, you usually find a lot of people do sort of make decisions about where they're going. And there's obviously a predominance of you know, planets in Aries. So the archetypal theme is about being courageous, going for things that are new, and being quite daring, and almost, dare I say, impulsive in decisions. So you know, this is quite a big day. And interestingly, in the UK, obviously the 12th of April is a big thing, because we come out, we're at the second stage of coming out of a lockdown, and you know, shops begin to open and stuff like that. Retail sector begins to open, and of course, you know, I talked about Mercury in Aries. Mercury in Aries is at 15 degrees in Aries, so it is, you know, it's at that middle part of Aries. So again, you know, buying and selling and goods. So it's quite an optimistic kind of day, particularly the 11th and the 12th of April. It will feel like we're all starting again. It's all new, and that new moon really kind of emphasizes that as well. We've also got, supported by that, is Mars sextiling the moon and the sun here. So again, Mars being the ruler of Aries, sextiling, which is you know, a 60-degree angle, re-emphasizes that sort of courage, that Aryan need to be impulsive. It could be that people suddenly spend a lot of money, or look at business models, how they're going to move forward, and new planning to do with businesses and buying and selling and goods. Although obviously with the whole pandemic, the retail sectors have been deeply affected. My sense from an astrological perspective is that's not going to be the long-term aspect of it. I feel that, you know, actually it will do quite well, you know, in the long term. And I feel like this new moon kickstarts it for a lot of businesses and a lot of people. And it may be a new way of doing it, but it's it will feel like, right, there's optimism, and there's money to be earned and money to be spent that comes into play. And it's interesting because if I take, like, you know, of course, Aries being the first house, if I take the symbolism of this is at 6 in the morning, we would put in the natural zodiac, we put Taurus in the second house, and you've got Uranus, you know, transiting in Taurus, which re-emphasizes again the particularly with agriculture and food industries. This is, I keep saying this, going to be a big thing, that's a movement that's going to start to really kind of begin to manifest. And I think this new moon kicks that into action, actually, here. Very grassroots, very local community shopping. You know, no longer maybe going to a city or a big town to do shopping. It's very much locally based here, and particularly supporting the local agricultural economy is going to be a huge movement that I feel is going to happen through this. And as I said, I think this new moon really kicks that into action here as well. Okay. Also, just at this time, just a note on the nodes, the nodal moons, because nodal points of the moon. This is the South Node and North Node in Gemini and Sagittarius. This is this constant reference about short distance travel and, of course, long distance travel. And the North Node, which is typically, and I know this is a very basic level, the North Node is perhaps more supportive than the South Node. And that's a very basic interpretation. So the North Node is in Gemini, which is in a natural zodiac short distance travel. And the South Node, which is more difficult, is in Sagittarius, which is, of course, long distance travel. So if we look at that, the short distance travel of the North Node in Gemini is being supported by Mercury, again, the sextile aspect here. And it is also being very much supported by Saturn, which is now on the 12th of April at 12 degrees. So we make it a trine aspect with that North Node. So getting short distance travel really kind of beginning to open up. If we look at a South Node, that's been trined by Mercury, or has been. Mercury is now moving away, and the Sun. So, but it's more about talking about it. So this is an ongoing, but particularly when I get to June, this is when you start to see activation points in terms of long distance travel and international travel moving forward. So yeah, new moon, very, very powerful actually at that time. Okay, let's move a bit more forward here. So I've gone into the 16th of April now, and what's changed? First of all, Jupiter at 26 degrees. Jupiter's, by the time we get to middle May, it will go into Pisces. So Jupiter's really had, in its first stage, very short period in Aquarius from middle of December 2020 up to the middle of May. It will go back into Aquarius for the second half of the year, but it, you know, it's moving very, very quickly through that. And it's connecting a bit with Pluto here, although I don't really, semi-sextiles, I'm not really a massive fan of how much they contribute, but it's certainly, you know, they're talking to each other, but perhaps not in a way that we would necessarily like. They can't really see each other clearly. And we've interestingly got the Mars making that by 1 degree, making that trine aspect with Jupiter, really kind of focusing on that. Let's go get them. It's a bit like blind optimism at this point. We've got to be careful that we're not overtaxing ourselves or we're overdoing it. And of course, you know, because we've all been affected by this pandemic, maybe we will be a little bit like, hey, go out there and, you know, and let's just have a good time. On this day, of course, the moon is making a conjunction with the North Node here. This is these key dates actually around this period here. I mean, key dates I'd say from the 11th of April and probably to around about the 21st of April here. A key, the most active times for April. But we'll look ahead here. Big news though, Venus. I explained about Venus being in Aries. Well, it's now moved into Taurus. Is at 1 degree on April the 16th. So, you know, Venus rules Taurus, and therefore Venus can operate. Although it's applying a conjunction to Uranus, which kind of sparks it, makes some interesting combinations there. But Venus can actually relate and it can function. And if you're in a kind of a Venus perfected year, so Venus rules your year, then this is going to be a nice time for you, an interesting, nice time for you. But I would, you know, it's interesting because it's also going to square over the next sort of 3 weeks. It's going to square Saturn, bit of Jupiter as well, conjunct to Uranus. So, you know, Venus is in for an interesting time. As I said, if you're in a Venus perfected year, then you're going to really kind of feel that Venus energy. It's going to be quite an exciting time for you individuals there. We can also see that Mercury is still in Aries and hurtling towards the Sun at that particular point. But yeah, okay, let's just move on to the next stage. So I'm going to do the 20th. 20th is when the Sun goes into Taurus, very early on the 20th in the UK. And we've also got Mercury that's moved into Taurus. So we're in that Taurian stage of the year. So we move from the energy of Aries, the pioneer, courageous, impulsive, fiery energy of Aries, to the earthy, sensuous energy of Taurus, the pragmatic. If we go and conquer something, we've got to build on it and look at the practical aspects of that. And that's really where the Taurian cycle comes into play. So we've got the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Uranus all in Taurus. So there is a shift. So all that exhilarating energy of Aries suddenly, right, okay, let's look at the pragmatic, let's build on this. Certainly from a political point of view, from an artistic point of view, from a buying and selling goods aspect. It's now about building on what we've tried to put out there externally. And is it got firm foundations here? So we move into a different stage. But you've got to remember, I mean, in the Northern Hemisphere, certainly, you know, this is the time when we're in the second stage of spring. And we firmly, whenever you go into the second stage of a season, you know you're in that season. We know it's spring. When we go into the early stages, so when the sun is in Aries, we know it's spring, but we can have some dodgy days where perhaps the weather is not necessarily like spring, it's still got a hangover from winter. But tend to be in the second stage of any season, you know where you are, you know. So energetically, people feel a little bit more, I know where I am, it's a bit more grounded, it's a bit more earthy. And certainly people are looking forward to the summer, and they can feel that things are changing, and we all feel a bit more grounded when the sun is in Taurus. I feel, certainly, we know over the years of speaking to clients, that time of the year seems always to bring out a groundness with people. In fact, we've really got a dominance of fixed signs, so not much is going to change in May, really, in terms of, you know, surprises, I would say, from where we've currently been. So any elections or stuff like that, local elections in the UK, certainly I can't really see things changing dramatically. Fixed signs remain in the status quo here, and just try to look at any, you know, perhaps maverick kind of energies. Maybe the Uranus, you know, Mercury making a conjunction with Uranus may bring out a little bit of that maverick energy, or someone coming up to the surface who has that maverick energy in the political scene might try and spoil things, but I can't see it being successful at that particular time. Okay. And we can see Mars at 28 degrees. So it is now, I use the whole sign house system in astrology. So I always describe it as when a planet is moving out from one sign to another, and one house to another, I always describe it as like it's been in a Gemini room, Mars, for 2 months. You know, it's lived in there. It knows where the light switch is, where the furniture is. It might rearrange the furniture like in a Gemini aspect. And it's just about to walk out the door, Mars, and go into a new room where it'll be for a couple of months, which is the room of Cancer. So it's just opening door. So you know, it can see that the next room it's gonna go into, and so it's a kind of halfway aspect. It's leaving. It's done its job, and it knows its room. It knows its space before it goes into Cancer, which will be within that week. Okay, and I'm sure we'll look at that. Okay, so that's quite a nice start to the sun in Taurus. Let's kind of move forward again. Yeah, so this is 23rd of April here that we've got. We could also see that the moon is now heading towards a full moon, which will be in Scorpio. And we can see that Mars is still at 29 degrees 50, so it's about to step into that Cancer room, as I would say. And look at that. Venus and Uranus are right on top of each other at that time, the 23rd. It'll actually be just, yeah, end of 22nd to the 23rd, early 23rd. That we've got Venus and Uranus. That's a nice little conjunction. I like that conjunction. here. We've also got a quincux aspect between that's been ongoing for last week of this between Mars and Pluto, which is that's always a bit tense, really. And that it's the feeling, maybe collectively, that the feeling that things are going to kick off a little bit for many people, that things are going to become unsteady, or a little. It's not a full-blown aggression, but it feels like it's bubbling under the surface, like a bit passive aggressive collectively we might all feel at that time, until Mars actually goes into Cancer, which is about to do, and then that might slightly relieve that. And of course it's still making that trine with Jupiter. So let's again move on here. Okay, so this is the 27th, and this is so the 26th, 27th, we have the full moon, just going to be at 7 degrees in Scorpio. Now we have Mars at 2 degrees in Cancer. It's gone into Cancer, so it's relieved that quincux aspect with Pluto a little bit. But listen, Mars in Cancer is in its fall. So again, Mars is having a really, really tough time. It really has, for a long, long period of time. If I go back to last year, when it was in July, it went into Aries, then it went retrograde. Before that, before July, it was in Pisces, for a couple of months. That would have, so all the way, think about it, all the way from sort of May, maybe even nearly a year, Mars has not really been really great. The warrior has really not been good, not been in good positions. And I think this is the thing. If you're in a Mars perfected year, you've been in a Mars perfected, you're going to find this, you would have found this very, very tough. And I got to admit, okay, when he goes into Leo, that's when it can operate. That's one of the better combinations. Then it'll go into Virgo, which it's okay, but not great. Then it goes to Libra, which is not good. And then when it gets to Scorpio, that's when it's in its rulership. So, Mars in Cancer is very emotionally driven, and it's a tricky energy to work with, and you'll know that if you're born with Mars in Cancer in your natal chart. How do you display your anger? It will be, the drive will be very emotional, which sometimes I suppose can be okay, but a lot of the time it can lead to having to pick up the pieces later on. So I'm looking at that Mars in Cancer again. Mars not being able to function as well as I would like it to, and hasn't for some time, which always contributes to things getting delayed, things not moving forward quick enough, things just, and it's the emotional response. There could be with Mars and Cancer, a lot of fear that comes up because we feel that we can't do anything about it. So there's a little bit of fear that's coming to mind here. Obviously that full moon is going to is separating trine from the Mars. But that's a tricky energy, to work with the Mars. But initially it's kind of a little bit out on its own. Okay, it will sort of apply a sextile to the Sun and Uranus, it will. But it's a little tricky. Again, Mars cannot function the way that it should here. And this full moon between the polarity of Taurus and Scorpio always brings out the dynamics of what we've got to hold on to and what we've got to let go of. Really kind of important. And there's a stubbornness there with those two polarities. They don't want to let go here at all. And also Venus is squaring with or has been squaring with, again, it's separating with Saturn as well. So it almost feels like this time could be kind of maybe talking about restrictions coming in here, or we're not quite sure about the next stage, you know, we might have to delay stuff. I'm just going to go forward a little bit more. So I'm on the 30th now here, just to see how that's panning out. Okay. So if I look at this, we've got a Mercury applying a square to Jupiter as well as Venus. So Jupiter's been very, very activated. I've got the Sun conjunct on that day, 30th, with Uranus. So this is a little bit of an unpredictable day for all of us. Of course, the moon is now waning, and it's at end of Sagittarius here, and it's going to go into its fall of Capricorn. So the end of April tends, I think, key days is going to be a little bit fear-based and a little bit, oh, have we made the right decisions, politics, and perhaps that buying and goods and selling and stuff like that maybe just feels a little bit wobbly at this particular time, I would say. Yeah, before we go into the May here. So on the last day of April, it'll feel a little bit right. Okay, what do we do now? Is this all going to sort of work in our favor or not here? And remember the full moon, particularly the moon in Scorpio doesn't, you know, it's in its fall, so it's not a particularly a moon that I would say is an advantage to us all. It will bring up all our fears collectively. It will feel very much that kind of general anxiety here, and that means when I said about what do we hold on to, what do we let go of, being a symbol. That's of course, you know. So we're coming to the end of April. Feels very much like, you know, where are we all going with this now? You know, so there's these different stages in April that take place, and you know, I think that's quite a powerful symbol at the moment. And although, you know, there is an optimism in that sort of the beginning and the middle part of April, certainly the end, we sort of end on a little bit of a, oh, we're not sure about this, you know, we've got to be careful, maybe too careful in some respects, and that has effect on the general sense for everyone. And we want stability, we want to know where things are going, but when you put the Uranus in the mix of all the Taurian planets, it's always going to kind of spoil a party a little bit and give us a sense of, oh, from one day to the next, it may just change. So there's very much that kind of going on here at this particular point. Right. So I hope that has been of insight, and no doubt I will catch up with you all soon. If you do like the video, please do the like button and subscribe. Until another time, enjoy the rest of your day.